Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to be back for the second episode of this webinar series. Today, in fact, we will be focusing on real-world experiences of women and communities leading gender-inclusive and gender-responsive restoration efforts. In this session, we will showcase some very inspiring stories highlighting the challenges, successes faced by women from Indigenous peoples and local communities. It'll also share valuable lessons learned, illustrating how integrating gender equality into restoration strengthens community resilience, enhances biodiversity conservation, and leads to more resilient futures. So before, I'm sorry, can we get the screen back? It's a little technical glitch as always. If you could share our screen. Um, Let me know. Nina, do you want me to share my screen?
Yes, please, Shruti.
Okay, I'll do that. Hold on. So just 2 seconds. So with that, so before we begin, let me go over a few, hold on, housekeeping rules, which is to ensure that we listen carefully to our speakers who are going to be sharing some very interesting stories. Please keep your microphones muted throughout the session to avoid any disruption. Interpretation. So we are offering live interpretation in French and Spanish. You can access this by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen on the right side and selecting your preferred language. This session is being live streamed on YouTube and will remain available afterwards. So if you know anyone who couldn't attend today, please feel free to share the link with them. We will have a question and answer session after the panel. You're welcome to post your question at any time during the session in the Q&A box. You do not need to wait until the end. And as always, we would love to know where you're joining us from and what you do. So please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. It's a great way for all of us to connect and hear about each other's work and also possibly learn from each of you for the next future webinar. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I have two poll questions. We want to gather the perspective of all of you who have joined. There's no correct answer. If Sumina could you please launch the first poll to get a sense of what it is? The question is, what factor do you believe most strengthens the resilience of gender-inclusive ecosystem efforts? You have 5 options, which is one is the women's traditional ecological knowledge, equal access to land and natural resources, inclusive governance and decision-making, financial and technical support for women-led initiative, and support policy and legal frameworks. I know they are all very, very equally important, but like if we were to look at prioritizing it, what would you prioritize the most over the other? And like I said, there's no correct answer. Any answer for us is just to get a general perspective. So we do have equal access to land and natural resources. We have someone saying supportive policy and legal frameworks. Um, for anyone, I'm going to keep this yes. Oh, okay. So, oh, it's kind of moving between inclusive governance and decision making and equal access to land and natural resources. I'm going to keep it 5 more seconds, and then we're going to move to the next poll question. Very interesting. Thank you so much. Looks like equal access to land and natural resources seems to be the most important priority for ensuring gender-inclusive ecosystem restoration effort. But we will also learn from our speakers today as to what it is, what are some of the learnings that are coming from their experiences. Now we have another poll. The second poll question is, what is the most significant, can we do the next one, poll?
Shruti, give me just 2 seconds. I'm trying to figure out. Sorry for this.
No problem. Perfect. Our poll is ended. Thank you so much for your inputs. We have a next poll we also wanted to gauge is, what is the most significant barrier to women's full participation in ecosystem restoration based on your context? Is it limited land ownership and tenure rights? Is it lack of access to funding and resources? Is it social cultural norms and gender stereotype? Exclusion from this decision-making processes? Or limited access to education and technical training? We already have a lot of interesting responses coming. There are, one of the highlights is it's actually moving from social cultural norms and gender stereotypes. It's a good back kind of and lack of access to funding and resources. I'm going to wait another couple of seconds and then we can end this poll. I think we can end this poll, and looks like this is our response. I think each one of them is equally a barrier to limiting women's participation. However, one of the biggest barrier is the social cultural norm and gender stereotype. With that, I am going to move on. It's a very interesting revelation from all of those who have joined us. So I'm going to now go back to some background on the Restore Her Right initiative, and to understand this journey, we need to go back to 2021. This journey began with Women for Biodiversity supporting women-led restoration initiatives in 6 countries: Argentina, Solomon Islands, Kenya, Costa Rica, Cameroon, and Myanmar. These were either existing ecosystem restoration initiatives or processes that actively involve women, or new initiatives led by women. The ecosystems we focused on included forests, mangroves, wetlands, sand dunes, and more than 500 women were directly involved, and over 120 hectares of land and water were restored through this effort. In fact, one of the Costa Rica experience is what we are going to have and listen to, and I'm so glad we will get to hear more of what has happened after that. So basically, this is where it emerged from. And one of the most significant findings from these initiatives and processes is that when women lead or participate meaningfully in restoration effort, transformation occurs at multiple levels, which is not just ecological, but social and economic. Restoration work is often tied to local livelihoods. So when women are at the forefront, they help strengthen livelihood securities for their communities and for themselves. Ecosystem restoration led by women also includes revitalizing traditional food systems, which directly impacts community health and food access. And women gain more control over conserving and protecting their territories as a direct result of self-determination processes through these restoration initiatives. These efforts also include young people, enabling intergenerational dialogue and exchange of traditional ecological knowledge. And as women take on leadership roles in restoration processes, they gain recognition in local, regional, and global decision-making spaces, including in natural resource management and governance. So what we've seen is that gender-inclusive restoration has wide-reaching impact, and not just on the environment, but also in communities, livelihoods, culture, and governance. So based on these learnings is how we based on these, there were a bunch of principles that were emerging from the processes. And all these principles pointed for a need for continued dialogue, learning, and advocacy. So in 2024 at 𝗀𝗏𝗶𝗶𝗃, we launched the Restore Her Right initiative. This initiative basically has 4 pillars, which is 4 pillars, where we aim to promote the rights of women in conservation, governance, and restoration. It is also rooted in the belief that when women lead, the earth heals one step at a time. We also hope that this initiative becomes a space for collaboration across organizations, practitioners, communities to collectively advance gender-responsive ecosystem restoration and achieve gender equality. So it's based on 4 components, 4 core components or 4 pillars. One is the advocacy hub, where we continue to campaign and build partnerships that challenge dominant narratives and push for women's inclusion in global restoration dialogues. In the evidence and storytelling, we want to gather real stories, and that's what we're going to hear today, and not just anecdotal, but grounded, lived experiences. And these stories show that gender-responsive restoration isn't just theoretical, it's happening right now as we speak. And community exchange platforms. So this is a space for members of the Restore Her Rights community to share, learn, and collaborate. By connecting practitioners, we create opportunities for cross-learning and support. And the Learning Resource Center, where we are developing a centralized hub for resources on gender and restoration. This will be useful for those who are just starting out, as well as those who are already working in this space. And it's also for contributors to share their work. Ultimately, the goal is to build a community of practice, a network of people, organizations working together to promote gender-responsive ecosystem restoration. So we invite everyone today here to sign on, participate, and contribute to this growing community. We will share the details into the chat box so that you can register and become a member of the Restore Her Right initiative. And with that, I'm going to stop and move on to our first speaker for today. We have with us Mr. 𝗀𝗏𝗶𝗶𝗹, who is the socioeconomist and gender officer at 𝗀𝗏𝗶𝗹𝗃, which is based in Nairobi, Kenya. He brings extensive expertise in climate change adaptation, tree-based value chains, and inclusive landscape restoration. Today, he is going to be sharing about the gender equity, disability, and social inclusion, which is the 𝗀𝗏𝗋𝗋 framework in landscape restoration through case studies of Laikipia and Makueni in Kenya. So over to you, Dennis. Thank you, and thank you for being here and sharing.
Thank you so much. Please confirm you can read it from my screen.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, good afternoon from Kenya and from wherever you are joining us for this.
Sorry, Dennis, we are unable to see you though. If you could move, I know these backgrounds tend to.
Am I audible enough now?
I don't think we are able to see you.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh, now we can see you.
Okay, thank you so much, and sorry for that. Good afternoon from Kenya. My name is Dennis Wakapa. I'm a research associate working on gender. Today, I'll be sharing on how we have been able to apply gender transformative approaches to land restoration, borrowing the lessons from 𝗀𝗙𝗹𝗹 County, which is in the 𝗀𝗙𝗱𝗶𝗶 areas and also in 𝗀𝗀 County. So why does gender matter in land restoration? One of the things we found that men and women often have different roles and unequal access to land resources and decision-making power, and also the liberty to do the same. This means that they experience the benefit and burdens of restoration differently. If we ignore gender restoration efforts, we risk falling or reinforcing inequities. So on the other hand, promoting gender equality can actually improve both the effectiveness and sustainability of our work in restoration. So in this case, we had two projects funded by the UK back through the 𝗙𝗹𝗹. One project was working in 𝗀𝗙𝗹𝗹, while both of the projects were working in 𝗀𝗀. So
Sorry,
the first,
Dennis, I'm coming in. Are you changing the slides? Because we are only able to see the first one.
so, sorry, let me see. I think there is an issue.
Yes, now we can see.
Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, we are working on two projects funded by the UK Pact through the 𝗙𝗹𝗹. One project is in 𝗀𝗀. Both of the projects are operating in 𝗀𝗀, while one project was working in 𝗀𝗙𝗹𝗹 and Taita Taveta counties. So these projects take gender transformative approaches, meaning that we are able to change the cultural norms and the power structure that drives inequalities. So we have trained over 1,000 community members through the trainer models, working closely with the county government throughout the process of the implementation. So nature-based solutions through landscape restoration are more than planting and growing of trees, because our strategy has been no one should choose between feeding the family today and protecting their land for tomorrow. We are also focusing on that farmers do not have to exploit their land to make ends meet. We do that by helping farmers combat climate change while restoring the ecosystems. Finally, we are working to ensure that everyone's voice are heard, opinions are respected, and they are involved in decision making. From the context analysis that we normally do before the implementation of the project, through the household interviews, through the focus discussions and key informant interviews, we noted that men dominated in decision making and controlled productive resources, and also the income they generated from the productive activities within the household. Another thing we noted was that much of the household and farm labor were assigned to women, which these are non-paid labor, while men took the commercial farm labor or the activities that would eventually generate income. We also realized that the priorities and needs were different from one gender to the other. We also realized that there was exclusion of the young people and the elderly, and also the people living with the disabilities, as these people are considered to belong to special groups with special interests. So why are the community dialogues? How did we promote the economic inclusion? So we did this through collective actions, where we integrated gender with other approaches, like the water interventions, we had the tree seed and seedling systems and tree growing, and we had the bioenergy sourcing and use. So we integrate these restoration approaches through collective action where we encourage both men, women, young, and elderly to participate in the processes. We also directly provided livelihood assets such as water tanks and water pans. We also provided shade nets to the vulnerable group within the communities. We have also done the joint investment where households are required to invest. For example, they were required to dig the water pan, then the project would provide the lining, the dam liner, and also the shade net, and also the technical know-how. We also did the capacity building through trainings and demonstrations to bridge the information gap. We also used the community dialogues, which I'm going to speak about in a few. So we took one of the key tools that we are using for gender transformative approach, which is the community dialogues, because the community dialogues are designed to spark reflection and conversation around the gender roles, relationships, and decision making within household, especially for those that relate to land restoration. So the dialogues consist of a series of group activities that encourage open discussions and self-reflections. They help participants explore how gender dynamics affect their household ability to engage in restoration activities. So we use creative visual methods like role plays to unpack imbalances in labor and decision making, which is a common thread in the activity. Like how are things now, and how would you want how would you like things to be in the future? These help communities create a shared visual for the future or map out the step needed to get to where they want to be. Now, of course, changing deep-rooted norms does not happen overnight because some of these are deeply entrenched and some people are more into cultural way of life and they don't want to change. But this conversation are a powerful first step in shifting the people's mindsets and building capacity for inclusive restoration. So we have documented this in our facilitators guide, breaking the ground for learning the community dialogue on gender and land restoration, which you can access from the QR code shown there. Sorry. So let me take you through to our 6 main activities that we normally take our farmers through. The first activity, which is gender, sex, and gender. This activity is supposed to introduce activity, explore the differences between sex and gender, and help participants reflect on socially constructed gender roles. It is a useful starting point for getting everybody comfortable with the topic and establish common understanding of the topic. The second activity that we take them through is the gender position bar. This is a visual and interactive exercise that looks at the type of work done by men and women and why. So the participants, place card represented different decisions taken above and tasks under the category that show who does what. This activity is supposed to reveal the unequal workload women often carry and open conversation about how things are often done. The activity also reveals the gender involvement in decision making within the household. The third activity is the bargaining role play. In this activity, we achieve so we invite the participants to create a short skit showing household negotiations. For example, decide which tree species to plant. Crucially, men act as women, while women act as men in this play, which build empathy and help participants see the situation from the other's gender perspective. The fourth activity is we develop the progress markers. In this activity, men and women form separate groups. and discuss what changes they would like to see in the other genders' behavior. It often sparks heated but important debates, especially around sensitive issues like land ownership, culture, traditions, the income allocation expenditure within the household, which are perceived norms and decision making. The other activity, which is the fifth one, is the vision journey. This is quite more reflective exercise, especially well with the couples. So in these activities, participants identify as shared goals for their household and plan how they will achieve it by building practical planning skills and emphasizing on collaborations throughout the developing the vision journey. It is where are we now and where do you want to be the next future. If they choose that they would want to progress with tree growing, they have to map that clearly for the next years until maybe when they realize the benefit from tree growing. The sixth activity is the gender balance tree. This is usually the final activity where participants identify inequalities in the household work, income, control, and spending. Because in the household, we know that we have an equal way of contributing to the household income, and also we find there's an equal way of spending. So the participants then discuss what changes they could help them achieve the goal by mapping out the vision journey. So what changes have you seen from the work? So in 𝗀𝗀, we have done a follow-up interviews with people who took part in the training, and many have reported improved communication and cooperation by their spouses. So others have reported being involved in joint decision making. There are better sharing of household and farm responsibility and sharing of benefits. We also had stories of men cooking meals and taking care of children, even some men volunteering to take children for a regular medical checkup, and others even attending the school meeting, which traditionally was not the case. So these are small but meaningful shifts in a day-to-day life events. So we believe these factors have contributed to the success of our work. So the materials are engaging and interactive because they are not just lectures but about gender, because they are deliberate in local language by trusted community members, and we have worked closely with the county government or in the areas that we are working in by involving not just the environment officers but also the gender office in those respective counties, which have really strengthened an ownership of the activity of the work we are doing to ensure that there's continuity even after the project life. We also involved key people in the discussion, such as leaders and opinion shapers in the community. They are very key because they form an idea about something and they push it to the rest of the members. Then we have integrated trainings, as I mentioned, with the context appropriate water, tree sustainable wood fuel management interventions to make sure that this does not just add at gender interaction, but there is other biophysical activities to implement. So intervention approaches that we are using to ensure that this continues even our project life. Before we do the project, we conducted the baseline to localize so that the interventions that we will bring on board, they are tailor-made to that particular area. We also do engage the religious administrators and community forest associations and county officials, because we cannot talk of restoration if you don't look at the national mapped ecosystem like forests. And in Taita Taveta and 𝗀𝗀, we are working with the community forest associations because we know continuous use of natural resources, and once the farm resources are depleted, the community now are turning to the natural forests. So we are trying to encourage farmers to move away from the forests and domesticate that forest in their farms. So we are working closely with the community forest associations because these are the people who have been allowed access to the forest resources. So we are also doing the interventions to meet the need of individuals and the national goals. And I've mentioned that we are working toward the realizing of the domestication of forest and landscape restoration strategy, which is the main document that was developed in Kenya. So we want to ensure that the gender work contributes to the success of this work. We are also working to seeing that we are contributing to the forest monitoring and the landscape restoration. We have a document, a live document that was developed to ensure that in all the actors who are in the forest and landscape, they are able to monitor and report the people who are involved in restoration, their hectares of the land they have been able to restore, and also the number of trees that they are growing, and also the livelihood that they have been able to touch through the restoration interventions. The indicators of GSC outcomes is that we are able to know that our work have impact by looking at the inclusivity of the participant in restoration activities. This would include, for example, tree growing, especially the nursery, is dominated by men. And this is an area that we have been encouraging and supporting women to venture into nursery propagation and also seed collection, which is a key area in restoration, the process of restoration. We are also encouraging women to speak and have their say in decision in matter income and also on expenditure, household expenditure. We are looking at the efficacy and the degree of decision making because I remember there was a time I was having a conversation with women in Makueni, and we asked them whether they think they have the right degree of decision making if they were left alone to make decisions on behalf of all members of the household. So to find that because women have grown to see men take up main decisions, some had low level of efficacy on the same. So we encourage them to feel that they are sufficient and they can do or they can make their decision on behalf of the household. So we have also been monitoring the changes in household consumption pattern. These not only include food. Definitely, food is one of the things that we are targeting because one of the drivers of land degradation is agriculture. And agriculture they are doing agriculture for food and income. So it's an area that even as we do the restoration work, we are also touching on other avenues of provision food. That's why we have other activities like kitchen gardens. We are providing direct water pans for irrigation to encourage them to move away from depending on basic natural resources. We are also looking at the consumption of technology because we are in the information era and technology is coming in handy. Then another thing we're looking is the improvement of the working environment, especially improving on the safety, efficiency, and we are guaranteeing the output. If we go to the rural areas of Kenya, as I mentioned, the household non-paid activity have been left to women. It is women who would source for water, and I'd pinpoint a case in Makueni where a woman would walk for 15 kilometers to collect fresh water for drinking, leave alone cooking, it is for drinking. So what we are doing is that in such a case, we're doing direct intervention by providing tanks. We are also improving the quality of the work environment. Women cooking at a very stressed environment, especially women who are involved in cooking, who are depending on firewood, using the 3-stone cooking stoves. And this we are coming in by not only constructing the modern improved cooking stoves, but also even training them to construct and maintain even after we have left, so that to improve their working spaces. So what are the changes that we have seen? In Makueni County, the changes that we are seeing is that there's an attitude change. We are seeing women now feel that they are equally as capable as men, and also seeing that men are willing to shed the traditional norms and also to accommodate and start to doing things that were traditionally thought to be done by women, which is a great step toward restoration activities. I will also see a case where we met in Laikipia. While we are doing the direct interventions, I would find that men were resistant for us to do direct intervention in their farm if we did not go through them. So in that case, we had to sit them down, explain the importance of why it is important. It does not matter who the project came in through, but it is the end benefit that matters for the household. So that marks the end of my presentation, and thank you for taking time to listen to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful experience that you've shared with ICRAF and 𝗙cie𝗹𝗹 that's been doing. And I think it's very crucial to understand what kind of frameworks that exist and how can we work towards innovative mechanisms when we are engaging with women within communities, and not just women, but also men. And I think some things that we figured out even during the poll is about one of the biggest barriers is social cultural norms. So it's very interesting to see this. And I hope there are more questions. So please keep asking your questions in the Q&A box. In the meantime, we move on to our next speaker who have joined us very early in the morning from Costa Rica. We have 𝗙𝗪𝗊𝗋, who she is a small-scale fisher and mollusk gatherer from 𝗀់_µ, Costa Rica. She manages the 𝗀_µ molluscos 𝗀់_µ, and also is the president of Costa Rica's network of responsible fishing marine areas and marine territories of life. We also have 𝗀់_ ጽ_ᵒ, who is the gender and development specialist with 𝗀_ᵉ Solidar, where she's been there for almost 5 years, and they will be sharing about the participatory management and self-actualization processes of women mollusk collectors and the key demands as we lead up to the World Ocean Day next month. So thank you, Hara. Thank you, 𝗀_ ጽ_ᵒ, for joining, and thank you for making the time. Lovely to see you. Over to you.
Bueno, hola, saludos desde Costa Rica. Como Shutri mencionaba, mi nombre es 𝗀_ ጽ_ᵒ y formo parte de 𝗀_ᵱ RL. Nosotros somos una organización que tiene ya más de 25 años de estar trabajando en Costa Rica y en la región de Mesoamérica, acompañando a comunidades y organizaciones como las de Araceli en su fortalecimiento de capacidades y sus procesos de gobernanza. Sin más preámbulo, para no quitar mucho tiempo a la compañera Araceli, que es la que va a liderar esta presentación, te doy la palabra ahorita y ya voy a compartir pantalla para que nos puedan seguir.
Ok. Bueno, mi nombre es Araceli Jiménez, ¿verdad? Pertenezco a la red de áreas marinas de pesca responsable, soy co-coordinadora. También soy gerente de 𝗀_µ molluscos 𝗀់_µ, que es una cooperativa de 53 socios, 40 mujeres y 13 hombres, que nos dedicamos a la extracción de moluscos, reforestación de manglares, entre otras cosas. Siguiente, Gris. La red de áreas marinas de pesca responsable está integrada por 22 comunidades que abarcan la costa pacífica y caribe de Costa Rica, ¿verdad? A lo largo. Entre estas comunidades hay territorios marinos de vida, áreas marinas de pesca responsable, territorios indígenas, nada más. Al siguiente, Gris. Hemos trabajado de manera conjunta con la red en la defensa de los derechos humanos. Tenemos un proyecto de ley en la Asamblea Legislativa sobre las directrices voluntarias que abarca los derechos, ¿verdad? Como lo que son tenencia de tenencia de tierra, equidad de género, acceso al mar, acceso a un seguro social diferenciado, ¿verdad? También tenemos una agenda mujer de mujeres pescadoras, donde se hizo un foro de mujeres pescadoras y molusqueras, donde exponían cuáles eran las dificultades, ¿verdad?, que tenían y qué era en lo que las mujeres se sentían más vulnerables para tener sus derechos, ¿verdad? La siguiente, Gris. 𝗀𝗶𝗶𝗶 es, como lo dije ahora, es una comunidad de mujeres y hombres molusqueros que vivimos en el Pacífico Norte de Costa Rica. Nos dedicamos a la extracción de moluscos, a la siembra de manglares. Hemos sembrado más de 20,000 plántulas de manglar. Yo creo que ya vamos llegando a las 30,000 de diferentes especies. La que predomina es el mangle rojo, que es donde viven los, o donde se reproducen los moluscos. Siguiente, Gris. Antes de la restauración, hicimos talleres de trabajo y empleo decente, que yo siempre he dicho en lo personal que ese taller marcó el antes y después de 𝗀𝗶𝗶𝗶. Nos lo vino a impartir 𝗀𝗀Solidar. Ese taller les enseñó a las mujeres de la organización la importancia que tenía nuestro trabajo, porque muchas veces veníamos de trabajar, ¿verdad?, de extraer, y a veces hasta nos daba un poco de pena, ¿verdad?, que la gente nos viera como embarrialadas, como los pelillos parados, y, y también el tema de nuestros hogares, ¿verdad?, que tal vez creíamos que nuestro dinero no era tan importante como el de nuestras parejas, ¿verdad? Que también estábamos aportando a nuestros hogares. Fuimos visibilizadas con eh, es que se llama una sesión de fotos, bueno, no sé, como nos hicieron una exposición, perdón, de fotos que se llamó El rostro del manglar, donde era el rostro del manglar, era el rostro de las mujeres de la organización, donde se exponía lo que hacíamos, cómo se hacía, dónde íbamos. Y ahí la gente aprendió, también la gente externa, de quiénes eran las personas que extraían, de detrás de quién estaba un ceviche cuando se lo comían. La siguiente, Gris. Logramos hacer, ¿verdad?, con 𝗀𝗀Solidar, un plan de aprovechamiento participativo para poder obtener para poder formalizar nuestra actividad. Este plan de aprovechamiento participativo incluía áreas de reforestación, áreas de como cultivo de viveraje de las especies, áreas de donde se podía extraer y áreas donde en realidad no servía nada, ¿verdad? O sea, no se producía, como áreas muertas. Esto se hizo a base del conocimiento tradicional, ¿verdad? Donde, perdón, también nos dimos cuenta de que nuestro conocimiento era tan importante como el conocimiento científico, ¿verdad? Que no siempre los científicos tenían la razón, que también, que quién más que nosotras, que éramos las que vivíamos en nuestros territorios, podíamos saber qué era lo que estaba pasando en ellos y dónde se podía reproducir, dónde se podía reforestar, dónde no, dónde sí. Nosotros en Costa Rica extraemos 4 especies de interés comercial, pues las cuales son almejas, mejillones, choras, que es un tipo de mejillón, y piangas. La siguiente, Gris. El primer intento hacia la formalización, como ya se lo dije, fue en el 2015, que fuimos la primera organización en Costa Rica al obtener una autorización corporativa que incluía, pero esto fue solo de una especie, la cual fue pianguas, porque no habían estudios el Estado no tenía estudios de las otras especies. Esta autorización abarcaba en ese momento los 47 socios de la cooperativa, pero fue más un dolor de cabeza que un alivio. La siguiente, Gris. Durante el proceso de restauración, se tomó mucho el consentimiento, perdón, previo, libre y informado. Se nos dijo cuánto había de recursos, qué queríamos nosotras hacer con esos recursos, en qué queríamos, digamos, invertir el dinero, cuáles eran las prioridades de la organización. Fue una actividad muy bonita porque se nos tomó en cuenta nuestro, nuestro parecer y como lo dije antes, nosotros las personas que vivimos en los territorios somos los que sabemos cuáles son las necesidades de nuestros territorios y de nuestra gente. Siguiente. Aquí podemos ver, ¿verdad? Que eran las reuniones que se hicieron, eh, eh, cuáles eran las plantas las que queríamos sembrar. En este proceso logramos sembrar un tipo de manglar que está en peligro de extinción en Costa Rica, que se usaba muchísimo para hacer carbón, ¿verdad? Entonces, sí está, ¿verdad? Un poco extinto. Entonces logramos en este proceso poder sembrar de este tipo de árboles, ¿verdad? Que son tan bonitos y, y que ya casi no había. La siguiente, Gris. En este proceso se unieron también hombres de la organización, el cual le tomaron mucho cariño a a este trabajo, que ya no era tanto por tal vez el dinero que nos íbamos a ganar, sino el aportar algo a nuestros a nuestro lugar de trabajo. En este proceso también, después del COVID, habíamos perdido mucho como la confianza, estábamos un poco desanimados y logramos, ¿verdad? volver a confiar que se podían hacer las cosas, que nuestra organización, muy importante, podía estar otra vez con la vitalidad que habíamos iniciado, sin tener problemas de endeudamientos con nadie, ¿verdad? Que podíamos volver a salir adelante, todas juntas. La siguiente. Después de la reforestación, establecimos un trabajo colectivo, visibilizando nuestro trabajo a nivel local, nacional y global. Con la meta 23 logramos ir a la COP15, a FAO Roma, al Immersion Chain que se hizo aquí en Costa Rica, a la COP16 y a la UNOC 3. La siguiente, Cris. También hemos logrado comercializar de una forma directa en el mercado del mar, que es una iniciativa de la red 𝗀𝗙𝗋, que se le trata de comprar a las 22 comunidades, ¿verdad? De la red de una forma justa, ¿verdad? Que el dinero llegue a las personas, ¿verdad? Que hacen la actividad realmente, que sea pagado de una forma justa. Por lo menos se nos vienen a comprar 1 o 2 veces al mes, ¿verdad? Donde por lo menos las mujeres logran tener ese ingreso de dinero de una forma real y justa que llegue a ellas. En la siguiente. También logramos por nuestro trabajo, ¿verdad? Ganar un premio por lo de la reforestación de la casa de moda de 𝗀𝗙𝗋𝗶, que vinieron, ¿verdad? Hacemos visitas guiadas también educativas, y el muchacho vino a hacer la visita, nosotras sin saber, ¿verdad?, qué era. Fue una forma genuina, y cuando nos dijeron habíamos ganado un premio por las buenas prácticas que se hacen en nuestros manglares. Como lo dije anteriormente, en nuestro proyecto de ley, ¿verdad? Está la corriente legislativa ya firmado y esperando, ¿verdad?, que pueda ser una ley de la República. La siguiente. También logramos intercambiar, ¿verdad?, conocimientos con otras comunidades, como una que queda en 𝗀𝗙𝗋. Fue un intercambio de saberes. La siguiente, Iglesia. Lo que queda por hacer, que realmente la meta 23 logre de verdad incluirse, que no quede solo en el papel, porque que las mujeres podamos de verdad estar presentes en la toma de decisiones, que podamos estar ahí, que las mujeres seamos más incluidas, que nuestros derechos se vean de verdad visibilizados, y que al igual que nosotras, que nuestra organización o nuestro territorio, también hay otras comunidades que necesitan ayuda, ¿verdad? Nosotros vamos encaminados, vamos un pasito más adelante, hay unas que están un pasito más atrás, pero todas siempre tratando de salir adelante. Muchísimas gracias. y podemos ver fotos de todo el proceso.
Thank you, 𝗙𝗻𝗋 and Griselda. Thank you so much for being part of this and sharing that inspiring story because this is something that truly, kind of puts the local to global context and what happens and how even despite challenges, despite the various barriers that you faced, you kept going, and there was something so interesting and wonderful about the self-actualization, the self-determination processes that the women in 𝗀𝗻𝗃 have been able to overcome and move past. And it's always been an inspiring journey to hear about the women of 𝗀𝗻𝗃, and we hope to hear more of these the next phase of your work towards it. With that, we finally have our last speaker, who is doing some very interesting work in Ghana. 𝗀𝗃𝗱 is a system scientist with over 10 years of experience working at the intersection of agroforestry, restoration, and rural livelihoods. Her work focuses on enhancing food security and reducing climate vulnerability among smallholder farmers in northern Ghana. But today, with her, we will explore landscape degradation in northern Ghana and emphasizing gender disparity in restoration and what kind of framework was looked at when she was she was documenting this process. Thank you, 𝗀𝗃𝗱. Over to you.
Yeah, hello. I'll proceed to share my screen with you. So can you let me know if you can see my screen? That will be my cue. Yeah.
Yes. If you can put it on, if you want to move to the first, yes.
Yeah. So, hello. I'm joining you today from a town in the north of Ghana. It's called Bolgatanga. We are on the border with Burkina Faso. It's about 33 degrees temperature, transitioning from the very hot part of the year into the rainy season. And like 𝗀𝗃𝗱 said, I've been working on this research for the last 4 years as part of my PhD, and I'm happy to share with you some of the key highlights from that research. So I want to contextualize the region in which this research was carried out. The north of Ghana, it's a deciduous landscape. That means it's very dry, the vegetation is very dry. We have dispersed trees on the landscape with an understory that is predominantly a grassland vegetation. And we practice the parkland system, where we have the mosaic of forest, farm, and livestock. And agriculture is the mainstay of the landscape. We are actually also classified as the food baskets of the country because we produce most of the grain, the cereal, and livestock. So we also supply the remainder of the country with protein from cow, goats, and poultry. And I mentioned, I talked about the temperature because it also gives some perspective on the temperature or the rainfall pattern. We have two main seasons that are confined to, so the dry season starts around October and it starts to rain around June. And the rains are gone by the end of October. So it means that we have this very narrow window that we are operating for agriculture, and we scarcely have any irrigation going on. Excuse me, I need to caution. There's a motorbike that's making a lot of noise outside. Just give me a second. I'll caution them and come back.
Sorry, Gloria, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. There was a motorbike that was trying to park outside. A lot of distractions. So like I said, the agriculture is confined to a very narrow window. And so you find out that most households are also very dependent on other tree resources across the landscape. And because of that, we also have some seasonal migration of both livestock and humans to the more wet areas of the country. The households also have a lot of food gap months when the food supplies are depleted. And remember, these are smallholder farming households. And these gap filling mechanisms are dependent on tree resources. So the high dependence on tree resources also results in high rates of degradation, because the food is used to diversify both the nutrition and the meals, and also to earn incomes for other household needs. And actually, in some parts of the country, it's threatened with desertification. So as a result, when you also come to the landscape, you see a lot of restoration interventions that the landscape has attracted because of the degradation across the landscape. So this degradation that we experience, and as a result, having a lot of restoration interventions going on, you see by looking at how the restoration is carried out that most of the degradation assessment is externally designed. So when we talk about what the degradation factors are, where degradation is occurring, and how restoration is going to occur, that is all externally designed. So we find out the implementation of the restoration actually lacks local inputs. So when you see the types of degradation that are happening across the landscape, where this restoration is happening, and even the activities that are suggested or promoted under these restoration interventions, they don't reflect the local priorities and don't capture issues of access, women's livelihood, and the labor of the restoration. So the outcomes we propose or we envisage that all the restoration outcomes that are happening are potentially unbalanced because they lack this local context. And in this landscape, it's a traditionally patriarchal landscape where land is owned and controlled by men. And women are the most dependent on tree resources because they don't control the land. And because of how these structural challenges are interpreted in practice, women tend to lack an agency around tree planting and management, and being excluded out of decisions of restoration. And expanding tree cover, which is a critical component of restoration, then results in women being excluded from this process. So if we are thinking about really capturing the perspectives and reflecting women's perspectives in restoration interventions, we need to unpack these structural challenges and negotiate these gender norms. That's how come we talk about gender transformative actions. And right now we are at gender transformation. That's the aspiration, is to end up with restoration interventions that talk about gender, that address gender transformation in implementation. So we have come from the process or the point where projects were gender blind and ignoring that norms had an impact on restoration outcomes, to gender responsiveness, where we only acknowledge women as participants of the restoration interventions, to now looking at unpacking the causes of these inequalities and addressing them to create the shifts in behaviors and relationships that actually result in equitable outcomes for all. And one of the key strengths of the 𝗀cie that we aspire to is that they actually then create the spaces. And Dennis alluded to this or spoke about this when he said that people role played, people negotiated, people dialogued. So people can test this and see how they feel about it, and then actually then decide, okay, this is something we can do, or this is how we can go about improving the situation that we currently are in. So 𝗀cie has also quite evolved from the 1970s to the 2000s, where we didn't integrate women, where we only integrated women without looking at the norms, to now where we are looking at a situation whereby we say that a person is a combination of multiple layers of discrimination that actually affect whether the person has access to a resource or not. And it's been mostly applied in the health and education sectors. I don't know of any known application of 𝗀cie in a restoration context, and particularly in the landscape that I currently operate in, there are no known 𝗀cie interventions or no evidence of 𝗀cie application. So what we are proposing, or what we proposed under this research, was that let's unpack the norms, let's negotiate at the community level, let's negotiate at the household level what people want, and then we can decide collectively at that level what types of restoration people are interested in, what land uses people want to restore, with what species and with which intervention. And then hopefully at the end of that, we could say that our interventions are equitable. The outcomes we get from these interventions could then be equitable. So the theory of change that we proposed under the research was that we applied the 𝗀cie, which was applied here at the household level, looking at couples. So couples came to this training at the community level. We had these 𝗀cie interventions that we trained these couples over a period to ensure that there was a continuous action, engagement, negotiation, and investment in developing their capacities for areas that we were weak in the hopes that we will shift the gender relations at that level. And with that, we could improve one, household well-being, and also household relations. And once that was improved, we envisaged that we could then improve the resilience of the household and communities, because resources are shared, decisions are shared. It's not one person that is just holding on the resource, like the man that is holding on to the resource, so that when he dies, his wife suddenly does not have any assets to turn into a livelihood to support her household, or does not understand what decisions have been made about the land. And with that, we also hope that once we can achieve that, when we have structured fair engagement of women or different stakeholders in restoration interventions, then we could input those interventions with the different species that we want. And that is when we can actually say that these restoration interventions are potentially able to deliver equitable outcomes. I was happy when Dennis was making his presentation, and I must say I've worked with Dennis virtually somehow, because we adopted almost the same approaches with this study. So we first had the baseline to identify the gender inequalities that were existent. Then we had group discussions where men and women were able to share their experiences of being a man or a woman in that locality, so that each could empathize with the other. And the role plays mirrored these inequalities back to the different groups, and also helped to crystallize or paint a clearer picture of the inequalities, and then open up conversations about how then to shift these relationships and have a vision for the households, which you could see. And what was unique also about this study was that we installed community champions in the communities, and the role of the community champions was to support the households along the journey, because one output of the GTA discussion was that we had these progress markers we had these gendered indicators, which were progress markers of the changes that the households wanted to see across the landscape over the period. So the community champions were basically going into these communities and supporting the households by sort of encouraging them, going to the households, being there, facilitating or moderating the conversations about what you wanted to change, how is the change happening, what are the challenges to overcoming the challenges that you wanted to see, the changes that you wanted to see. How can we support this change? How can your spouse and other household members? And even though it was a man and a woman that came, a couple that came to the meeting, in the household support or discussions, there were opportunities for both, for other household members to join. So we found situations whereby co-wives were coming to the meeting, and that was also very important because they contributed to the household dynamics, household relations, and well-being. So the GTA in that aspect was then cascaded across the different individuals in the household. And then we marked the progress of the gendered indicators to see what changes were happening. And then we had the review workshops where the champions came together to share their experience of supporting the household, to learn from each other's experiences, and then to go back into the community and continue supporting the households. This is the output from the gendered negotiations that we had. It's a graduated indicator actually of what changes both women and men wanted to see across the landscape. And if you look closely at the table, you see that we clustered them under household labor, household expenditure, household decisions, household well-being, and household relations, to see which of these changes was happening and what was supporting these changes. And even though I guess on this table, you cannot see clearly, it was also a graduated change of what was expected to happen quickly. So the first 5 was a change that household expected to happen quickly after the interventions we had, to changes that were more, I guess, deeply ingrained, that requires continuous engagement, support, and dialogue to have these changes. And I'm happy to share that in the results we got from monitoring these indicators over a period of, I think, a little over 2 years, we saw that there were positive changes for both men and women across all the indicators that we monitored. And the most significant ones were that men were involved in traditionally perceived women household roles like childcare, fetching firewood, fetching water, and which was very significant because water, for instance, and firewood, women had to travel longer distance to bring this into the household, and men also had the equipment or resources to bring it in with the bicycles and the motorbikes. And women also then access a portion of the fertile family farm to cultivate crops of their choice. And these farms tended to be homestead farms that were just next to the living quarters. It meant that women could juggle both their household responsibilities with farming, and also it also gave them the liberty to cultivate crops that were complementary to the staple that men were cultivating. And across that landscape, we clustered the landscapes according to what was the main livelihood of the landscape. So we had the forest cluster, we had the irrigated farming cluster, then we had a cluster that was close to the main markets, and then we also had a cluster that was isolated, but it was mainly a cluster where there was artisanal gold mining happening. And we realized that even though we said that there were positive changes across all the households, the changes varied dependent on what was the existing agency for the women in these clusters. And we found out that especially for the women in the irrigated cluster who were more engaged in a lucrative vegetable farming, they already had some existing agencies, so they were able to make these changes quite clearly compared to the other clusters, even though the appetite for GTA was higher within the forest cluster, where women were more dependent on tree resources, and that's where the highest appetite for GTA happened. So in conclusion, I'd say that we see that gender norms of access to the land uses, access to tree, or who owns or controls the land is actually shaping the parkland landscapes. And current restoration loses sight of that, because what happens is that restoration comes into the system and uses the existing structure. So for instance, if you went into a community, you said you wanted to establish or you wanted to restore a land use, you go through the system. So you go, you meet the chief, you meet the elders, you meet the landowners. Potentially all these people you meet are going to be men, and you have no woman represented. So they will not have captured women's perspective. And this actually, using this approach actually then reinforces the gender inequality we see. And clearly we missed the equity goals of restoration, equity goal aspiration of restoration. And because of the positive changes we saw across all the indicators we monitored, we say that change in gender norms was also quite possible, because we say that, oh, it's not easy to change gender norms because they are deeply ingrained, it takes a long time. But if we can have these structured negotiations at the different levels, depending on their context, like have negotiations that are context sensitive, and also determine what the precursors to gender transformation is at within that context, we potentially are able to transform these or change. No, I don't say it's not transform, change these gender norms, because then after they've practiced it for a number of times, when a number of years, is when we can say that yes, true transformation has occurred. And it's an iterative process. So it means that what you also within that process also deal with the emergent issues that are occurring. And the success we saw potentially was scaled out. We scaled that out across 5 districts and through community saving groups. So we did the research at the household level, but then we scaled this out across the community and also across the landscape into 5 districts. And what would I say the next steps are with what we have done? So we have carried out this novel research in restoration, applying GTA in restoration. How does this, but we also took like a microscopic look at the household level. We scaled deep. But how do we, how does this change happen across different skills in different contexts? What would be the progress markers? Will women be interested in in access to fertile family land? Will women be interested in having men contribute more to household labor? That is very much context specific, so it'll be interesting to see what the results are when this is scaled out into different contexts. What are also the institutional changes or precursors or markers when we scale this across the different institutions, across the different actors? We didn't include chiefs in this research, but if we had a cross-community dialogue with different chiefs, what would be some of the indicators that, because they also see the landscape at different levels, what would be some of the indicators that we come up with across there? So in bringing my presentation to an end, I'd say that this was a very interesting research that happened, and the evidence we had across the landscape showed that indeed we can apply GTA in a restoration context, but it's very important to understand that there's a huge importance of actually understanding what the contextual issues are, be able to then design interventions that are appropriate to that context. So I'm here for any questions. Thank you, and hello to everyone again.
Thanks, Gloria. Thank you so much. It was very important to kind of get context, because we keep dealing with questions of how deep do we scale down and how much do we scale up, and what are the things that we can take from the scaling down to the scaling up, scaling deep to the scaling up, and what are, like you said, it all depends on the context and the spaces where you are. A lot of things also depends on the social cultural norms. So with that, we have finally got all the speakers here. We have a couple of questions that's come that was really, really very fascinating. Thank you so much. I see that there are two questions for Dennis, one question for everyone, and one question for, I think, Araceli. For Aras, maybe I will start with Araceli, which is, what kind of activities do women lead for mollusk conservation? Do you blend traditional knowledge with modern scientific methods of conservation?
Nosotras, discúlpame, ¿cuál fue la pregunta? ¿Me puedes repetir la pregunta?
Yes.
Si quiere, Chuti, si quieres yo se la
yeah.
repito, tal vez es más sencillo por la traducción. Ahorita la pregunta era, ¿qué tipo de acciones desde el conocimiento tradicional aportan ustedes como mujeres, ¿verdad? Que cuidan los manglares, que participan en esta clase de estudios y que tienen que ir ligados con el conocimiento científico.
Okay. Ya. Nosotras lo que hacemos en este tipo de actividades en que se refiere al conocimiento tradicional es que le decimos a las personas dónde se encuentran los moluscos, cuando a la hora de sexar, si son hembras, si son machos. Tratamos siempre de sacar, aquí en Costa Rica existen tallas mínimas de madurez sexual, que sean las pianguas que ya, o los moluscos que ya pasan el tamaño, para así poder hacer los estudios y mezclar el conocimiento, pero que sea una forma que no altere el medio, ¿verdad? Uh-huh.
Thank you, Araceli. I hope. So now I'm going to go to the next question for Dennis. Basically, the first question is, of course, I think you've already answered it in the chat, but it'll be great to also hear from you. Somebody asked about the sustainability of these processes and initiatives that you've done in Laikipia. And what exactly, and the other question was basically, what is the impact of private conservancies in northern Kenya on restoration initiative?
Okay, thank you so much for the questions.
Dennis, I think we've lost you to the background. If you could, okay, yes, we have you back.
So thank you so much for the questions. The question on sustainability in Laikipia. What we do is that we embrace the trainer models where we select, during the baseline, we select the vocal people in the community. We also work with the county extension services who advises or us on who would be the best local person to bring on board in our capacitation, so that we capacitate them not only on gender transformative approaches, but on other biophysical interventions. So in our intervention approach, we have the gender, the GTA, we have the sustainable water and wood fuel management and use, and we have the sustainable wood fuel management, but we have the seed and seeding systems. So we normally train these people on all the interventions so that they are not only taking the GTA to farmers, but there are other range of options to take to them. So another way is that we work with the county government, because the county government have their departments that specifically deals with matter of education and gender. So because in a Kenya context, government have not invested so much in science, but more on development, we capacitate them on the science aspect, so that even as they handle situation, especially conflict resolutions, they bring on the science aspect on what is happening in the global scenes. So we also work with the other partners. We have the private partners in the local communities, and we have the CBO. In Taita Taveta, we have the community users groups. So we are working with these groups because these are organized people and who are harnessing forest resources. And as I mentioned that the aim of this is that we want to take away community from forest dependent to bring that forest, those benefits they are harnessing from the forest. We are trying to encourage them to produce such benefit on their farms. So we are working with such communities to ensure that even after the project, such initiatives will grow even after that. The other question was the impact of the private farms in northern Kenya. Yes, actually in northern Kenya we have a lot of rangelands. There's a project that we worked on called Ranger. It was working in Samburu, Baringo, Isiolo. Those are the dry areas of Kenya. And in that project, we partnered with NRT, National Rangeland Trust, who are not only, these are private farms who have formed an umbrella to even solicit for funds, not only to help them, but also to help the community living within the conservancies. They have also been doing the private-public partnership with the government, especially the issue of the carbon financing and credit. You are aware that, especially like Laikipia, they are champions of harnessing and earning from the carbon financing and the carbon projects. And with that, they're able to encourage the community living around them to continue doing the conservation by showing how much they can able to harness from such initiatives. We have the corporate social responsibility. They have been actively in tree growing, and also in propagation of seedlings, especially like Kipia, where we have those trusts own nursery, grow seedling and distribute those seedlings for free to the community forests, to the schools, and also to individual farms.
Thank you, Dennis. Also, what would be also great if you want, if people are, for those who have joined, we will also be sharing some of the links that each of our speakers have shared through their research, all of that in our post-webinar report. So please take a look at it when we do send you the webinar. We have one last question. We cannot go beyond that. So we have one for Gloria, and then we are going to end with a group photo and a good. But so for Gloria, it says, I want somebody asked basically, as land tenure and security of individuals played a significant role. I want to know if there were power dynamics at play during this study. As land tenure and security of individuals played a significant role in the restoration process. Also, what strategies were used to get men and people in power to cooperate? And lastly, can the introductions of GTAs mitigate societal norms, or are there other ways to go on about it, as these norms in some communities have become their culture? We are short of time, so if you could I know that it's a lot of questions packed into one, but if you could be able to summarize it shortly.
Yeah. So yeah, power dynamics, how we dealt with power dynamics. I must say that we had a lot of goodwill through the partners with which we did the research on the ground. That was World Vision. World Vision has intervened on that landscape for more than 16 years doing other projects, developmental projects. So going through World Vision already gave us like a warm reception. People already were open to these discussions. And then through the community entry that we did, we always were aware and cognizant of the power dynamics at play, the structural challenges that were also on the ground, because we had already done the baseline survey. So in these meetings with the gatekeepers, we had to explain the rationale of the research and also explain what our approach was going to be. And also that was also all geared towards getting them to buy in and to accept that we were coming into the communities. One thing we also did was that when we were asking the participants to come, because we understood the power structure in existence, we asked the men to bring their wives. We didn't ask the women to come. We didn't invite the women and invite the men. No, we selected the households, and then we said that when you are coming, bring your wife, bring one woman from your household, somebody that was contributing to the livelihood. So it still gave men the power at that point to decide which of the wives came to the meeting. What problems we had with that is another whole discussion. But eventually we did navigate that and discuss that, and then also negotiate what the dynamics at the household was through the community champions. And then the last question, to say how we mitigated the societal. Yes, GTA, I guess it's very adaptable. So once you understand the context, then you can design interventions that are sensitive to that context. So the role plays, in my opinion, were very, very powerful in mirroring what the inequalities were. So and I'll share one example, that when we had this young wife with her baby sitting on her lap in this role play, she was acting as a man, and whatever the men asked her, now role playing as women, asked her, she said no. It didn't matter what they were asking for, she just said no. But in plenary, when we were having this discussion, then the men wanted to know, why were you saying no to everything we asked? She said, I wanted to give you a dose of your own medicine, because every time I came to you or any of the men, you always said no, irrespective of what the request was. So that was like a light bulb, and it encouraged these discussions, because the norms worked. We are not advocating that norms are completely bad or norms should be totally disposed of, but they worked in a certain environment. But now with the changes that are happening, people need to adjust. And once you can show them that that contributes to the household well-being and the household resilience, I guess people tend to be more open to the idea of changing these gender norms. Thank you.
Thanks, Gloria, for ending with that powerful note. It was very, very interesting. What we would like to do is have a quick photo, group photo for ending. And also at the same time, I would like to thank our interpreters who have stayed beyond the time and have really helped us make this webinar accessible to as many people as possible. So a huge round of applause for the interpreters for doing such phenomenal work in supporting us through this journey. And I would, so maybe Sumina, Mina, let me know when you're taking the photo and we will.
All right. If everybody could open their cameras, this one is just with the panel first. If the panel can smile. Oh, hi. Who's there? Somebody behind Araceli.
Oh, Mateo.
Hi, Mateo.
Mateo.
One more, please. Smile. Okay. Just a second. Now with everybody here. Okay, everybody. 1, 2, 3. And one more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everyone who stayed until the end of this webinar. It was wonderful, and I look forward to the next webinar, which is going to happen the last Friday of next month. Until then, please take care. I would also like to finally thank our Women for Biodiversity team for handling all of the back end and everything to make sure this webinar was a success. Thank you all for joining. Thank you to the speakers, especially for sharing. And these are some really interesting stuff that's happening. And I hope to continue these conversations. We hope to continue these conversations. If participants want to get in touch with the speakers, we would love to share your contact details if that is okay with you. And good rest of the day, good night, good evening. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.